we're having a dinner in 2016, and the conversation comes up about my GED because he was so happy, from what I told him, that I got it. I'm sitting there now, sweating. My heart is beating again, like that night I was running from the police, jumping over that wall, fighting for my life. And the other person who I was there with at the dinner, he said, he never got his GED. He lied to you. And the look on Sullivan's face and the loss of just happiness was leaving his body. Welcome to this special edition of the Paint Method podcast. Today it's just a solo story, but I'm coming fresh off of my high school graduation. Yes, you heard that right. I'm 41 years old, and I can now finally say that I'm not a high school dropout and that I finally graduated high school. Now, I'm going to share the journey that led up to this, and also share a little context of even why I was dropout in the first place. But the most important question I want to answer for you right now, that is, was it worth it? Was it worth at 41 years old, after experiencing success and having a steady career, was it worth going back to achieve something like earning a high school diploma? And will it change my journey at all going forward? And I do have that answer for you, and I will answer that at the end of this podcast. But those of you who are joining us, I just want to say thank you. If you've been a follower of the Paint Method podcast, thank you so much for doing that. And those of you who have not yet done this, if you consider just hitting the follow button on the audio platform you're listening to this on, or if you're on YouTube and you're watching these, just ask that you would subscribe and like this video so we can send you more as we put out more episodes in the future. But let's get into this story. Now, I've been sharing this on social media, being 41 years old, going back to high school. And before we get to where we are now, let's just go back to, where did all of this begin? Now, in high school, I was what you would consider an art rebel. I enjoyed art. I was really, really good at it. I just had absolutely no discipline. And I remember even in my first couple years of high school, my art classes, I was doing well at the work, but I was barely finishing the projects. Art and discipline at that time was nowhere to be found as a match. It was all talent, just no consistency. And I had some incredible art teachers, by the way. Miss George, Miss Floor at Sheldon High School. They were incredible at really introducing me to the fundamentals that I needed to learn about art. But I was going through sort of a troubled time, mainly my sophomore year of high school. This was when I was deep into graffiti. And those of you've seen the graffiti on the trains going by, and I'm sure at some point I've contributed to some of those that were going by at the time. But I was into hip hop culture. I was also into graffiti and even the culture of that as well. I just didn't know exactly where that was going to lead me. Now, there was one particular night, and I share this story on stage when I'm usually doing some keynote speaking, but there was one night where I was being chased by the police. And what I thought was a night starting out just doing some graffiti with my friends, I was in a run for my life. And as we were approaching this 8-foot stone wall, I realized that there was two different scenarios that could happen right now. I could, one, go home with this police officer in the back of his car off to jail, or I can make it on the other side of this wall, assuming that the officer wouldn't make it over this. So we're in this foot race now, and there's myself and two other friends. We're running towards this wall like our life depends on it. Well, we barely make it over the stone wall. You could hear the chatter on the 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 walkie-talkie for the police officer, and saying that we got away or that there's other units out. And my heart is just racing. And not just because of the fight, the run for my life, but mainly I was out of breath. I was out of shape. But I made it on the other side of this wall, and I really took this moment in. As I was making my way home, I didn't live too far from there. This was a really important moment for me to define, will I keep doing this art in this way, continuing to run from the police, or am I going to go in a new direction? The timing of this event and what I'm going to share with you next was ultimately life-changing and redefined my journey. Not too long after that, it was near the end of my sophomore year of high school, another teacher was bringing me to this animation class. And they said, you know what, look, you're not doing well in my class. Maybe you'll like this. So they're walking me to this classroom, and the teacher for this class, I always describe this moment like walking across the basketball court, and I see this tall, redhead, Darth Vader-esque presence. I think the sun was behind him, so I could barely see his face, but it was an intimidating presence. But as soon as I got close, it was the first time I saw and met Mr. Sullivan. So I explained to him what I was doing with the graffiti, what I was into. I shared with him my sketchbook, and he was nodding, giving the nod of approval. And he was like, this is good stuff. And then he told me this. It's like, if you can keep doing this, but you will pay to do this style of art. Now, if you want to get paid to do art, you come see me. Walked away. I was like, wait, I have questions. How do I get paid to do this? Because the thought of paying to do this art, graffiti at the time, was paying with fees if I hadn't gotten caught, paying restitution, or even jail time. And the thought of that was terrifying. But also the thought of being paid to do art at that time still seemed like, how? Who makes it as an artist? And so I followed Sullivan, and he really gave me a brief introduction into arts, media, entertainment. Now, he was teaching an animation class at that time in, late 90s, 98, 99 in Elk Grove, California. Is very revolutionary at that time because people didn't think that there was a real true future and career in animation or arts, media, entertainment. This is all pre-internet, pre-content. But Sullivan had a vision. They're going to need people to make this content, which he was ultimately right. But I just asked, how do I do this? So he made sure that I got signed up for Animation 1 as soon as possible. So I did this. I got into animation. I started learning the basics of not just bringing the characters to life, but also the art of storytelling. How to cut and edit these images together to tell a compelling story. And also to create characters who we believed in and how to develop that. Most importantly, how to work with the team, how to start and complete projects. The environment that Sullivan had created, which now looking back on it, that was the life-changing part. It was unlike any other art class I'd experienced. It almost felt like a coach who was not treating us like, in any soft or caring way that I hope this all works out. He's like, look, you could do the work or you don't. If you don't, this is what it could look like. And if you do, I'm here to help. It wasn't, it didn't feel cold. It just felt real. And for me at the time and my other classmates, that's what we needed. I'll share one more quick story before the end of that particular era. Is he had entered us into these animation competitions where we got to really see what we were made of. And I had spent months on this one particular 3D animation project. And then a week before it was due, the computer crashed. There was no way to recover the data. And I lost everything. So I came to him and I just said, I'm ready to give up. And he said, no, you're not. because I'm not going to give up on you. And we're going to finish this project. We have a week, and you're just going to have to put in the extra hours, and I'll do the same. So he did that. We were there, myself, other classmates, trying to finish our projects and get to the deadline. We had pizza showing up. I mean, it was such a camaraderie that I never thought I could experience this in a creative space. Usually creatives are working alone on their work in a very introverted way. This was a team. This was, we called it Canine Studios. Our mascot was the Husky. So Canine Studios was my family, it was my team. Well, that animation piece ended up winning first place in the category that I'd entered it. And it also set me on a path to know that this is what I want to do in my life now. I want to be a professional animator. I want to work for Disney. I want to work for Pixar. And then I got the call from my counselor near the end of my senior year. I already knew I was making up some work in some classes because I had not done well academically. And she just hit me with it straight and said, you are not going to graduate with your classmates. Now, from being on a high of this new purpose and direction, I now felt a new extreme low. I was devastated. And actually, I don't even remember telling Sullivan at that time that I wasn't going to graduate. I think I just kind of just kept it from him and just thought, okay, maybe I can just disappear after this. And that's what I did. After high school, matter of fact, I remember the night that it was grad night. I remember just sitting in my bed, just bawling my eyes out, crying. I remember it so vividly how sad that was. I just felt like a complete failure. Like I really let down my team, my teacher, my parents, my friends. But time went on. I thought I'll never see this teacher again. I'll never see this school. And so between 18 and 20, I was trying to figure out my creative journey. I was dancing at the time, but I was also still doing art at a high level, creating. It was at 20 years old, I started teaching myself how to paint on canvas. I was painting live at these small jazz clubs in downtown Sacramento. And eventually that evolved into a performance painting inspired by that artist, Denny Dent. I've told this story many times, but the live painting evolved into performance, and then I started pursuing that. Well, I started gaining a name in my local city of Sacramento at that time, and reporters started reaching out. And as I mentioned that I went to Sheldon High School, and I would mention my art teacher, they called him and asked him, how do you feel that your new star student never graduated? See, he never knew that I didn't graduate. So he called me and he said, what's up with this that I hear you didn't graduate? What's going on? And in that moment, I lied. I told him, I didn't graduate, but I got my GED. That was a lie. And I just still thought, I'm never going to see him. Like, why does he still care? But he did. I lied, said what I needed to get out of that, and carried on with my life. And continued to build this career, which what's crazy is I had that small lie with him, but to build a business and a career, it requires extreme integrity, especially if you're doing it in the public. And, I'm now selling paintings for tens of thousands of dollars. That wasn't matching up at that time with my character, and I knew it, but I just kept going on with my art career. Now, I eventually, between 2003 and 2011, just growing my career. I was already doing very, very well, traveling the world, doing 100 plus shows, tours. And then in 2012, that's when I entered America's Got Talent, where I had to do these large paintings in 90 seconds. Well, the one person I knew to turn to that always gave me the best advice, Mr. Sullivan. So I went to him and I said, hey, I've got this challenge. And he gave me some incredible advice and ideas. Matter of fact, most of those ideas I ended up pulling off live on America's Got Talent. And in fact, when I made it to the finals, and I thought I'm gonna win, I flew Sullivan and his wife out to New York City where the finals were. And he was there the day that I came in fourth place and lost to the dogs. But it's okay. It was still such a huge win for art. It was a huge win for my city of Sacramento, my family, and most importantly, I still felt so proud that I was able to make Sullivan proud even in that moment. And so from that point on, 2012, 2016, I mean, it's just a rocket ship. When you go on a show like that, you make it to the finals and you're like the top. Came in fourth place. So a lot of really cool opportunities came from that. Fast forward, I still kept in touch with Sullivan, this person I thought I would never see again. We're having a dinner in 2016, and the conversation comes up about my GED because he was so happy from what I told him that I got it. And I'm sitting there now sweating. My heart is beating again, like that night I was running from the police, jumping over that wall, fighting for my life. And the other person who I was there with at the dinner, he said, he never got his GED. He lied to you. And the look on Sullivan's face and the loss of just happiness, just leaving his body. I mean, that hit me. I was terrified. I didn't know what to say. But I had to come clean. And at that point, the truth had to come out. And I just was honest with him. And I told him the dinner didn't really end on a high note. You know, I still kept in touch with him. But, you know, fast forward in 2018, him and I were meeting up. And I was actually talking to him about how much he inspired me, despite the fact that I didn't graduate. But I still felt that his teaching style needed to grow beyond the classroom walls. So at the time in 2018, we co-founded Creator X. It's a nonprofit to help high school students get introduced to careers in arts, media, and entertainment. We launched it in 2018. It was a 3-day camp, and it involved these different pillars where we brought out our friends from the industry to teach these classes. So the students were learning these free classes from titans in animation and in sound production and commercials and you name it. And I was there obviously to keynote speak and share my own journey and to kind of lead it. And, you know, Sullivan at the time was like, look, I know you didn't graduate, but also you're an example of who we're trying to reach. That there's so many different paths to pursue the arts. And you didn't necessarily need the degree to pursue the art. And at the time I had agreed, but I still felt this feeling that I had let him down. That was still something that was there. And I carried this really since my grad night, from that night that I was bawling my eyes out in high school, when knowing all my friends were walking across the stage, I just felt this moment of disappointment. I still carried that even as a successful artist adult. And this is what I think many of you maybe listening to this, maybe you've had a moment like this where you've experienced some success or you've been somewhere in life, but there's this loss of meaning where in the world, how they view it, you are doing just fine. But internally, you're lacking purpose and direction or fulfillment in something that money can't buy and success can't fill. That's how I felt at that moment. And so fast forward in 2022, kind of coming out of the pandemic, I had the opportunity to perform for this organization called Highlands. That's all I knew at the time. And most shows, I do some research before I show up. And this one, I knew that they were an education organization, but as I got there, I learned that Highlands was a adult education charter and technical school. So they not only helped adults get their high school diploma, but they also offered career technical education, certifying people and adults in these new skill sets where they can go right into the workforce, from truck driving to they have a nursing program, cosmetology. I mean, there's so many incredible, like 20 plus incredible programs. I performed for them that night, and I shared this story that I'm sharing with you right now on this podcast. And they yell out from the audience, "It's never too late." And it had never become more clear that God has brought me to this place in front of these people. What better time than now? What better time? Because ultimately, even when I started pursuing art, it was not the perfect time. On paper, I should have just went and got a job. But there's no perfect time to start pursuing a dream. You just start. This was another moment. I thought, why not now? I go and I meet some people from Highlands, some friends of mine who actually introduced me to the organization. And I just knew that at some point in the very near future, I'm going to sign up and I'm going to do this. 2023, I mean, after the pandemic, we just got so busy again. I was super blessed because we went from 100 shows to 0 during the pandemic. So I was happy to just start performing again. But in 2023, I had just started this tour with Andrea Bocelli, performing with him at these arenas across the US. I also had just enrolled to finally start this process. And on paper, again, it was not the perfect time. I mean, I had so much going on in not only my personal life, but also professionally. Again, those of you thinking about this right now, thinking maybe you haven't done this, or this, whether you wanted to finish college or high school or some certification, you're like, I don't have the time. Trust me, I know what that feels like. And that started the process. I really didn't start finally doing the work until early 2024, even though my teacher was checking in with me like, hey, when are you going to start? My counselors were like just checking it, and they were amazing, and I appreciate that so much. And now the real work started because I went back on tour in early 2024, and here I am now trying to do my homework while on a tour bus, while backstage, while in hotel rooms, hopping on the Zooms for some of the group classes. It was hard. I remember taking my first test that I failed. It was hard. And I remember I finally had a class where I had to go in person. And I really was still thinking, like, am I going to finish this year? Am I going to graduate at all? I remember I went into this workforce readiness class, which every student from Highlands has to complete to go through this particular program. Even though I had finished my classes already in economics and English and done all the work, I still had to do this class. And this is when it became real. The classmates that I sat next to are who made it real. They are finding the time to make this class. They're calling in to work or going later or dropping off their kids at a different time or just trying to figure out. Life is hard for a lot of different people. And this class, being around my classmates, just was a reminder that actually, David, you have it good. You're lucky that you get to be here next to them. You have the flexibility to go to this incredible building and take in this incredible class. And the class was up for workforce readiness, was how to prepare you for interviews and resumes, which I had not done in 20 plus years. So I needed this class. But this is what I got out of it, and this is what made it real, is it gave me the empathy to really appreciate what people go through to pursue a dream, no matter what the circumstances are in your life. And those of you who are listening to this, driving right now, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're in your studio just painting away, creating. It's never a perfect time to start. But today is always the perfect time to start. I was reminded of this by listening to the stories of my classmates. They made this real, and they pushed me to complete this so I could graduate. And that's what I did. I took that inspiration. I completed my final tests. And when I'm recording this podcast right now with you, last night was my graduation. Last night, I took it all in, every part about it, the cap, the gown. I was sharing on my Instagram story all these stories leading up to it, to the day of. I'm sitting in my seat during the ceremony and sharing my story. I also had the opportunity to share this journey on video that they recorded and played before I walked up to get my diploma with the group, because we're in a huge group of students. Sort of like a valedictorian, but they do a video version of that for Highlands. But this was the coolest moment. Was last night. Ooh, this is a little emotional. Sullivan was there, sitting there, front row, watching me talk about him, this story. And they call my name. I go get my diploma. I walk across. I see him. And I just wave the diploma like, so proud. We did it. And when I say we, and I told him this afterwards, and I'll just say this. Was it worth it? Is the diploma, the high school diploma, going to change the trajectory of my life? The paper may not, but the process to get it did. And I told Sullivan last night, what was important about this was me keeping my end of the bargain. In high school, when that computer crashed and I was ready to give up, he signed up in that moment to say, I will not give up on you, and I will do the work that it takes to get you to the finish line. Whether it was that project we were working on or to finish line, his job as an educator to get me to graduate. I didn't keep my end of the bargain at that time. But last night, I did. And that is what I mean and what they told me, that it's never too late. It's never too late to keep your end of the bargain. It's never too late to keep your word. If you're breathing, if you are moving, if you are listening to this right now, you still have time to make it right. No matter what it is in your life that you feel like is you haven't fulfilled, whatever it is you feel like the world of success cannot provide. It's these moments. It's keeping your word. It's making it right with your loved ones. It's making it right for the people who showed up for you when you know they didn't have to. That's what that diploma represents to me. When I put it up on the shelf and I see that, that's what I'm going to think about. So was it worth it? Was it worth going through this process and getting the high school diploma? Absolutely. And that process changed me. Now, what's next? What is next after this process? The beauty of this life is you get to choose your journey. And I talk about this. The reason why the Paint Method podcast exists is to highlight us discovering where we are on our journey, the paint journey. We're at either one of these steps: passion, action, intent, new, or teach. I am at this part now in the teach part of this journey. The things that I've experienced up until this point, it is almost inevitable that I want to take the next step. I may not go to college, but I do in some form want to teach. It's a form of giving that I experienced on the student side that was life-changing from Sullivan and many other teachers that I had along the way. And that is something that I know is worth pursuing. And so my challenge to you is, I want to ask you this, is if there is something ahead of you, and maybe there's a health goal, there's an education goal, there's a career goal, I want you to do this. I want you to envision the path ahead. Now, with getting my high school diploma, there was a very clear path ahead. And thank you, Highlands, for just setting that and shining the light on it. I knew what assignments I had to complete. I knew where I had to go on this road, and that helped me envision it. Now, for your health journey, your education, or your career, there are probably some form of mentors out there that have been ahead of you. They've done it. Seek them out. Don't do this alone. Find someone who has seen the path, they've done it, and they can just help you out step by step and say, hey, this is what the path could look like. Because once you envision it, once you can see how clear it is that there's these steps ahead, that's when the progress begins. And you just start chipping away at this one assignment at a time. If it's a health goal, it's 1 mile at a time or one weight at a time. If it's career, it's one client at a time. I've done all those. So I'm just speaking from experience that the path starts with making the first step in that progress. But it starts by you being able to envision this process ahead. Now, I just want to thank you again for just listening to this story. I'm going to be sharing more about how I'm going to be transitioning into a form of teaching. Right now, we do have our courses available to help entrepreneurs, and there you can find some more info about that at paintplus.io. We have some info there, or also in the links below this on YouTube, there's a link to sign up for a webinar that we have coming up, whether it's live. I think the next one will be live for sure, but at some point they'll be recording. You can see those on demand. But feel free to DM me. Send me a DM. I get enough DMs where I can still get back to about 99% of them, 90% of them maybe. Send me a DM if you have a question about maybe the journey that you're on. Or also, if you just listen to this podcast, send me a DM. Just let me know, hey, I listened to it, and let me know if it helped you or if you have any other questions after that. Until the next episode, thank you for being here. Again, if you consider subscribing or following this on the audio platform you are listening on, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I just ask that you consider subscribing to this channel so you get updated when we put out more content, whether it's podcasts, live streams, or other content that can help you on your paint journey. My name is David Garibaldi, and this is the Paint Method Podcast. Thank you.